What up guys, Dreadshells here and welcome back to World of Tanks. We're going to be doing something a little bit different today, and quite honestly I've been putting off doing this for a long time because I know the amount of work and effort it takes going into making these kind of videos. But today I'm going to be starting a map scouting guide video series. Now, in this series, I'm going to be making multiple videos probably on each map because I don't want to make a really boring video of me going through a training room and going through all the different positions and saying, hey, this position scouts this position and blah, 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 blah. I would much rather show my own personal replays in live battles and show you guys how the spotting positions actually work in a live battle. So I will most likely be making multiple videos on each map and probably from each spawn, as the typical scouting game you usually don't cover all scouting positions from one side in one game. With that said, let's just dive into today's guide, and today we are going to be looking at the Lakeville map. Now personally I love Lakeville. I think it's one of the best maps in the game, probably in my top 5 list for favorite maps in World of Tanks. Not just from a scout's point of view, but from an overall map balance point of view. I think this map has a decent amount to offer for every tank class, and has a good balance when it comes to battle progression through the flanks. Now I think that Lakeville is probably one of the best maps for new scout players to start learning how to spot, and specifically how to progressively spot enemy tanks throughout the battle. You start training yourself to look and see how your position has vision on certain positions on the map and not on others, and how you need to relocate to get better vision on one particular area, or to relocate to spot a different area if your team has already defeated a particular position on the battlefield. Also, however, as far as scouting this map goes, I see player after player on this map fail to do spotting properly from either side, either from the south spawn or from the north spawn. And your team that is advancing into the city from either side takes a lot of early damage unnecessarily because you didn't counter scout, or you didn't scout their enemy team's approach into the city, and the enemy team has a huge advantage before they even start brawling with one another in the city. So I think that Lakeville has one of the highest potentials for new scout players to increase their battle performance and progressively learn how to become a better and better scout. So enough of that, let's just get started. And as I said before, I don't think that going into a training room and showing you guys a bunch of charts is going to be very dynamic and informative for you guys. A lot of people are visual learners, so I think I'm going to do this map scouting guide series on an actual live battle basis. And if it takes me 2, 3, 4, 5 videos to cover most of the spotting positions, even from one spawn, then that's what I'm going to do. It's more dynamic, and you guys can see actually how it plays out in a live battle. And that way you guys can learn better and apply it better yourselves. So let's just dive in here, and before we start the battle, I'm going to explain to you guys why I decided to go where I went at the beginning of this battle. And this is really important for you in a scout in any map. This affects if you're going to live or die in the first 30 seconds. It also affects, even if you don't die really early, how effective you as a spotter or as a potential flanker in doing damage yourself, you're going to be in the early battle and the mid battle. And the first thing that you need to look at when deciding where to go early in a map is the map itself. And since this video is about the positioning itself, I'm just going to cover that as we progress through the video. Second is the team compositions. How fast are both the enemy teams. How many fast tanks are on each side? And on here on Lakeville, we have quite a bit of heavies here in our top tier. And when you're deciding where to go, on Lakeville in the early game, a lot of people like to go to this E4 bush, just past this little knoll right here. And that is a very good and effective early spotting position. However, you need to decide how risky is it and how much potential reward is out of it. And I need to count the speed and vision of the enemy team before I decide to do anything. So I go through the team list here at the beginning of the countdown timer, and I start counting. Batchat, that's one tank. Leopard PTA, Wheezy 120, AMX 1357, and SP1C. So that's 5 tanks with good speed and good view range that could potentially spot me going into this E4 bush. So I decide during the battle countdown timer that I don't want to go to this E4 bush here to spot their team's approach into the city, although that would be useful in knowing their team dispersion and which tanks they're sending into the city here on the 890 lines. Instead, I'm going to try and counter scout their scouts or their spotters. And you can do this very effectively on Lakeville, and I'm going to show you how right now. So, since my team has a lot of heavies and most of them will probably want to go city, I want to counter scout their scouts on the 4 line because they're most likely to try and send some vision here. And you can see me pre-aiming here into G4, and I've already spotted a Leopard PTA. And I'm just going to pause the game right here. Go into free cam here. You see, there was no need for me to go up to where this Object 140 is right here. The spotting bush is actually right here, just in front of where this Object 140 is, to spot the enemy team's approach into the city. But the higher tier mediums are actually a much better tank to be doing this in this particular matchup because they have more hit points, they have better armor, and they have just better overall survivability. And you can see that they spotted a T110E5. I'm much more effective in trying to counter scout whatever they put onto the 4 line here, and I've already spotted a Leopard PTA and a Wheezy 120. You also can scout enemy scouts that could potentially move into these bushes right here. And this is a very important job for you as a scout because you prevent your team from taking a lot of damage. And I'm just going to pause the game here again. You can see there that this Batchat is using this classic F4 spotting bush here from the south spawn. And he unwisely fired to get some damage in on our T-34 back here and our AMX 1390 back here, and that got him spotted. I spotted the Batchat. So now, not only am I spotting all of their damage dealers here in G4, I'm also spotting the enemy tank that's actually hurting my team the most right now, which is the Batchat, through his vision. And hopefully my team can either kill him quickly or make him run away so that my team is no longer spotted approaching and driving into the city, and that they won't take any more damage. But once again, you see how effective this position is. I would recommend not using the C6 position if you have a scout that has under 390 meters base view range, unless you're using binocs on that particular scout. Because if you are using coated optics and you have less than 390 meters base view range, you're going to have a hard time cutting through the camo rating of some of the tanks that are going to be sitting up there in G4 shooting your teammates as they're driving into the city. But you can see there we've gotten their tier 9 mediums shot a couple times, and we got the Armage Borsig killed. Unfortunately, their Bat Chat only took one shot of damage, but we got rid of him, right? He was spotted, he got shot once, and now he is no longer able to give eyes for his team on the middle road. So now the friendly heavy tanks behind me can drive into the city without worrying about taking any more damage. And now, I'm just going to pause the game here again. Um, when you're deciding when not to move to the next spotting location is largely dependent on where your team is on the map. So basically what I'm waiting for is I cannot move up progressively to keep spotting further and further down this 4-line road until all my guys back here move into the city and they have control of at least the church here in the middle of the city. So unfortunately, I'm kind of I can't be very active yet, but I am waiting for my team to be more aggressive. And once they've taken that much ground in the city, that's my cue to start moving up. And so now, when you're retreating from that bush, you want to keep it behind you at least for 50 meters or so until you can basically, you know you're out of view range here of the enemy tanks. And I'm going to pause the game here again and explain why I'm making this decision. For two reasons. Why did I decide it was a good idea to move from this position here in C6 up along the water side and into this position here? Two reasons. One, our IS-3 drove all the way down the middle road here to G4, and he did not encounter any resistance at all until now. So I know that the tanks that were up here sniping have moved back at least probably 100 meters. Also, our Object 140 has moved into the middle of the town, and he has not spotted any enemy tanks in the city yet. And the key word is yet. You always need to be watching not only what you're spotting, but what your teammates are spotting. Also, just looking at the tanks that are on the 2 line, as well as the waffle here, I know that they don't have a lot of heavy armor in the city. So I know that even though my team are taking their time moving into the city, that they will probably have no problem whatsoever in defeating enemy tanks in the city because they have more armor and they have more tanks. The enemy team invested way too many tanks onto the 2 line, and they have quite a bit of snipers on the 4 line. So they're really, really vulnerable in the city. So I feel very confident that I can move into this bush right here at about E7 and start spotting this sniping position here where the Leopard PTA retreated to keep pushing their tanks off the 4 line road. That was a mistake there, knocking down that tree. Don't do that. And I'm firing here because of the previous reasons that I mentioned. The IS-3 should be proxy spotting anybody that would be spotting me if I fire in this position. And also our team have now moved up to the middle of the city, like I was saying earlier. And once again, remember that queue that I was waiting for sitting back in C6? Now our team have taken the city, although, Either they'll do it like this when there's no opposition whatsoever, or eventually killing all the enemy tanks. But this position here is really good for spotting the back slope of the sniping position here in H4. The major risk to you in this spotting location here, or using this bush if your tank is narrow enough, is getting spotted through this gap in the city. You don't want to be sitting here if there's enemy tanks in the middle of the city, because there's several streets, 3 streets here on the south side of the church, that all they have to do is peek around the corner and they'll spot you. So you have to know that your team have control of this area to use this spotting position. But now that our team have advanced past the church, I now know I can move up to the next and last progressive spotting position along the water. Always keeping an eye on what your team is doing. And we spot the Bat Chat moving up. Now I'm actually kind of stuck. I can't actually move from this bush because the Bat Chat will spot me. I'm just going to explain why here. Since my tank is so long, I cannot actually rotate my tank to retreat into the city this way, because the bush will no longer cover me and the Bat Chat will see me. So right now I'm trying to keep this bush in between me and the Bat Chat so he won't see me. I'm spotting him, and my teammates along the church here have good shots into the Bat Chat. Unfortunately, our IS-3 died there because of the Bat Chat's aggressive play. But now the Bat Chat himself is actually kind of pinned behind that Borsig wreck. So if he leaves this way or this way, I just have him perma-lit and he'll die before he runs away, hopefully. So now I can't move to my left or to my right, and I just have to be patient. This is one of the most important aspects of progressive spotting, either active or passive, is being patient. Your tank is a lot faster than most of the tanks on your team, especially heavies and certain tank destroyers. We spot the Oho there. And now that the enemy Bat Chat has died, I now know I can move progressively even further into the spotting position, into these buildings here. Now, I actually don't have to drive through these buildings. I could be a lot safer in taking a wider line along the H line. But I am pretty confident that I can make this safely. Now I'm going to pause again. So, just keeping an eye on what your team is doing as you're progressing through the map, right? There is only a Jagdpanzer E100 left, and I'm all the time being mindful of what can spot me as I'm moving from one position to the other, right? So this Jagdpanzer E100 is behind this large flank, this large mountain here, so he can't spot me, and my team are going to kill him very quickly here. There's no reason for me to go around there and help kill him. They have it completely covered. I'm serving my team better by trying to give more vision on their remaining enemy tanks that are most likely camping in their spawn in J2 and in J3. Now this location here is there's several different bushes that you can use on this K7 area to spot the campers. A lot of times people play this wrong once they get to this point in the battle. They've won the city, they've killed off all the enemy tanks, but let's just say for argument's sake that the enemy team still have a lot of healthy tanks left alive. What you don't want to do in a scout is move along this 4 line and move up to this H4 area. Because basically what that does is the enemy team knows you're there, and they will just wait for you to drive around the corner and kill you. It's a lot of risk for not a lot of potential reward. How you want to spot this J2, J3, J4 area is from my position right here. So if it takes you time to, if say for instance you were on the road, if it takes you time to drive back off all the way back around to here, then so be it. You have a lot higher chance of living, and you get better vision from this angle than from this angle also. Not only is it a higher risk in sitting on that corner and trying to peek and poke spot, but also you don't have as good of an angle in spotting the enemy tanks here. You see this position here is much closer to the edge of the map, and you can spot enemy tanks better here. Tanks that are good for holding this corner here, much better are for tanks with armor and a lot more hit points than you. So basically high tier mediums, kind of like this M46 Patton here that's on the middle row. There are several bushes that you can use to spot the campers here. You can use this bush up on the slope. I would only use this bush if you know that the enemy team's remaining enemy tanks don't have good enough view range to spot you going into this bush, because as you can see there's a large gap. There's a large gap here in between this bush and that bush, and as you're driving up this slope, enemy tanks can spot you from this location. So I decided to play it safe because they have two tier 9 mediums and a tank destroyer, tier 10 tank destroyer, so they probably have good enough vision to spot me doing that. So I go with the safer choice and use this bush here. And you can see there that I accidentally knocked over a tree, and experienced player in the Wheezy 120 blind fired my bush, and he just blind fired me again and bounced me, luckily. So I back up and decide just to try and get some damage here on this Artie, and I get blind fired again there. All those shots going in there. Just gonna pause the game here. Shitter LTTV. When the enemy team start giving reactions like that, you know you're doing your job right in a scout. When you're frustrating them with your vision and they can't hold their positions and get shots from range on your team because you're counter scouting their sniping positions. When you get frustrated remarks like that in all chat, you know you're doing a good job in a scout tank. So unfortunately I knocked over this tree, so they started blind firing this bush right away. So I decided that they're probably going to keep blind firing me, so I had to reverse out of this position. But you saw the vision I'm able to get from this spot here. I spotted the Artie, I respotted the Leopard PTA, and I respotted the Wheezy 120 as well. So now I'm driving back into the bush again. And now it's time to close the distance, of course. There's only 2 enemy tanks left alive. And I would be better serving my team in trying to kill the enemy tanks quickly instead of sitting back and sniping at tanks with really good armor. There's a little bit of a bug in the replay there, sorry for that. I think I was having problems with lag right here. There's the Wheezy 120 that was raging. He's also complaining of lag, so probably more people than just me had problems with that. And that's the end of the game. So as you can see here, we didn't do very much direct damage ourselves, and we probably could have gotten more direct damage had we been a little bit more aggressive in either driving through the 4 line or the 890 lines, but we were actually much more effective for our team by counter scouting at the beginning here in the C6 bush, a decision that I made based off of a combination of how much speed and how much view range does the enemy team have. So they had Bat Chat, 2 tier 9 mediums, and 2 tier 7 scouts. So that's 5 tanks right there that would probably nullify my trying to spot from E4. So I thought that the better choice would be to try and spot them here in this G4 area, and I did, and it paid off. We spotted their bat chat here, and he was forced to run away, and he didn't take very much initial damage, but we were able to get him killed later on in the game. And we forced all of their snipers off of this G4 position from our spotting, which then allowed our slower heavy tanks to be able to cross this relatively large open area here along B5, B6, B7, and B8 to get into the city safely, where the enemy team did not actually put a lot of tanks, so I think only a couple tanks. So they were able to kill that off very quickly, and our team had enough weight here in E2 to stop the large amount of enemy weight and enemy armor that they had put here into the 2 line. That's why you don't put a lot of your a lot of your team into the 2 line. It's just really, really easy to defend the 2 line if you know how to use the ridge lines, and you have arty backup or sniper backup here in B1. You can hold back tank numbers much more vast than your own, and you can just give your team time to work the other flank. So once my team took more and more control of the city here, I kept moving along these bushes here along the lake, bush hopping from E7 to F7, and then cut across these buildings here and up into K8 and K7, and was able to spot the remainder of the enemy tanks that were camping in J3 and J4, and we were able to kill them off very efficiently and without too much trouble. So you can see how just plain vision can help your team win games very easily. So I hope you guys enjoyed this first video I put together for the map scouting tutorial video series. Like I said earlier, I don't really want to do tutorial videos about scouting maps from training rooms or going through a bunch of charts. I may put a chart together for you guys for each map that I go through in the videos, just so you guys can see from a 2D version how the positions affect each other, and I'll probably link that in each of the video descriptions so you guys can take a look at that on your own time. But I feel that it's better for me to actually show you these positions in live battle situations and show you how effective they are at spotting the enemy team. Also, like I said earlier, I probably will be doing multiple videos on the same map and maybe even from the same spawn, because it's just very unlikely that I will be able to go through each spotting position from one spawn just in one battle. So it'll probably take multiple battles to do that, but that's fine by me. So I hope you guys learned some of the good spotting positions here on Lakeville from the north spawn, and how to defeat the enemy team quickly just purely from your vision. Good luck out there on the battlefield, and take care.